Hello and welcome back to English Podcast Voice, the place where we break down English for you. I'm your host, Quinn.
And I'm Riley. Good to see everyone.
So today we are tackling, I think, maybe the single biggest hurdle for every intermediate English learner. You know that feeling we're talking about? You're in a conversation. It could be about something simple like what you did last weekend, and you know exactly what you want to say. I mean, this beautiful flowing paragraph is just ready to go in your native language. But then you try to, switch on the English part of your brain and nothing. Just
Right.
radio silence.
That is the infamous translation trap.
Yeah.
It really is.
Mm.
It's that internal bottleneck where your brain just defaults to this three-step process. You hear the English, you translate it to your first language, you think of a reply, then you translate it back to English, and then you finally speak. That lag time is just exhausting. It's stressful. And it makes your speech feel so slow.
It really does. It's like your thoughts are driving a Ferrari, but your English mouth is still back at the starting line, tying its shoes. So today, our mission is to move you from that clunky three-step process
Right.
to a smooth, direct one-step connection. Think in English, speak in English. That's it. That is the ultimate shortcut to real fluency.
Yeah, and we're going to be diving into the neurological evidence today. We're going to ask if thinking even needs language at all, and we're sharing a truly mind-blowing case study from music history. And then most importantly, we're providing specific, actionable techniques to train your internal voice to start speaking English silently, to build what we call cognitive fluency.
And because, even when the thought is there, the wrong word can just slip out. We're also doing a really granular correction of the most common grammatical and usage errors that trip up intermediate speakers.
And to keep you engaged, you should definitely stick around for two major revelations. First, we'll explain the surprising story of this famous Soviet composer, Vissarion Shebelin. He lost his language ability completely, but he still managed to create a brilliant symphony. We'll unpack what that tells us about how we think.
And second, we have a tricky little pop quiz coming for you. It involves two verbs that trip up almost every learner. The difference between when to use borrow versus when to use lend. So if you want to ask your friend for $5 which verb is the right one, we will find out later in this deep dive. This is going to be a masterclass in fluency. You will not want to miss it. So please just take 1 second right now to subscribe to English Podcast Voice and like this deep dive. It really helps us bring this kind of detailed content to more people just like you. Okay, let's unpack this.
So to start this whole process, we really have to tackle the philosophical and scientific base. We need to know what we're actually trying to do when we tell someone to think in English. And that starts with asking a really big question. What actually is thinking?
I mean, most people just assume thinking is the voice inside their head, right? That's what I always thought it was.
That's the common assumption, yeah. But it's a bit too simple. Thinking is this massively complex process. It's how we use our minds to consider, to analyze, evaluate, remember, reason, solve problems. It's so much more than just internal speech. The sources we looked at kind of categorize thinking into two buckets. You've got conscious processes like, when you're planning a script for this deep dive or writing a detailed email. And then you have totally unconscious processes, like when you react immediately to a car pulling out in front of you or just blinking and breathing. You're processing information, but you aren't actively talking to yourself about it.
I see. And historically, the big thinkers, they really struggled to separate language and thought, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. For centuries, philosophers argued that language was basically the boundary of what we could do. Ludwig Wittgenstein famously said that the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. Bertrand Russell said something similar, that complex thought just couldn't exist without the linguistic structures to hold those ideas.
That makes sense. I mean, if I want to think about an abstract concept like justice, I kind of need the word justice. But wait a second. If thinking and language are so tied together, then why is that translation trap so common? Does the brain need language for all thought, or is language just a very useful tool?
This is where it gets really interesting. This is where we shift from philosophy to neuroscience. And the evidence, it really pushes back on the idea that language is strictly necessary for all cognition. Neuroscientists have shown that language processing, which is largely in areas like Broca's and Wernicke's areas, is often processed in a separate part of the brain from other critical functions. So things like planning, memory recall, complex reasoning, spatial awareness, decision-making, that's all happening elsewhere.
So they're related, but they're not the same circuit. Is that right?
Precisely. They are distinct. And the most compelling proof for this comes from clinical case studies involving something called aphasia. Aphasia, for our listeners, is a neurological condition where the language centers of the brain get damaged, usually from a stroke or some kind of trauma, and it can destroy a person's ability to use, understand, read, or write language.
Wow, that sounds devastating. I mean, if language really defines the limit of their world, they shouldn't be able to think critically at all.
You'd think so, but the results show the opposite. These patients, even though they were completely unable to use language, could still solve complex math problems, perform intricate spatial tasks. They could even engage in highly strategic games like chess. The thought, the strategy, the problem-solving ability, it was all still there, even though the words were gone.
That is amazing. So the core cognitive ability, the thought itself, is definitely there, even if the label for the thought has disappeared.
Yes. And the prime historical anecdote here involves the Soviet composer, Vissarion Shevelin. Back in the 1950s, he had two massive strokes that left him severely aphasic. He couldn't speak, read, or write. So logically, you would assume that a highly creative process, like musical composition, which requires immense structural thought, would be impossible for him.
Yeah, I mean, composing a symphony is a huge act of complex intellectual planning and execution.
Exactly. And yet, despite this catastrophic loss of his language capability, Shevelin went on to complete his brilliant Fifth Full Symphony. Dmitri Shostakovich, another famous composer, described the work as demonstrating sophisticated creativity, emotional depth, and really complex thinking, all achieved without the ability to use language.
That's just profound evidence. So if music and complex strategy can just bypass the language centers, what does that mean for an English learner? It tells me that maybe the structure, the grammar of a language is independent of the thought itself.
That's the key implication. We have to differentiate between what's called declarative memory, which is memory for facts and events, and that's very language heavy, and procedural memory, which is memory for skills and procedures like riding a bike or playing chess or understanding the non-linguistic syntax of music. Shevelin proved that the ability to perform these complex procedural creative acts was housed in a completely separate system.
Okay, so why does this matter to me, the English learner?
Well, an article from MIT's McGovern Institute gives us the answer. While language may not be directly involved in every single thought process, it is absolutely crucial for setting up and learning how to perform those cognitive skills in the first place.
So language is the essential training tool. It taught us how to count or how to do long division or how to structure a complex argument. But once the method is learned and internalized, we don't need the language running in the background every single time we do the skill.
Precisely. Your first language was the instruction manual. Our goal today is to replace that L1 manual with an L2 manual, so that when you think about a new scenario, your system defaults to English instead of translating back.
To do that, we need to focus on what happens when we do think with language. You keep mentioning the inner voice or inner speech. I think I know what the inner monologue is, but can you give us like the official definition?
Absolutely. This is the foundation of our work today. The sources really emphasize that the person we communicate with most every single day is ourselves, and we do this constantly through inner speech. The inner monologue is defined as the internal dialogue one has with oneself and one's mind. It's that silent voice that generates ideas, processes thoughts, and plans what you're going to say next.
Right. It's the continuous internal editor and narrator of my life. I notice mine is running almost all the time.
For most people, yes. And it's incredibly powerful because it's so fast. It's often 10 times faster than speaking out loud. This speed is what allows us to prepare and plan and monitor everything we say and do, correcting errors before they even reach our lips.
Okay.
Let's break down how the inner monologue works with 3 distinct examples. First, a formal one. Imagine you are preparing for a job interview. Your inner monologue isn't just reciting facts. It's rehearsing answers. It's checking your planned responses for clarity, monitoring your tone, and correcting awkward phrasing before you say it.
Okay, I can see that.
Second, a casual example. You're trying to find something important you misplaced, like your keys. Your inner monologue kicks in immediately to organize the search. Okay, did I check the kitchen counter or did I leave them by the door? I should check my jacket pocket again. It's pure, rapid self-regulation.
Right.
And third, a funny or weird example. Maybe you're watching a really terrible movie. Your inner monologue is having this silent, hilarious conversation with you. Did that actor really just say that? I have to remember that line so I can repeat it later.
Internalizing. That's a good explanation. Should I order the coffee or the tea? Coffee's stronger, but the tea is cheaper. I'm late. Maybe I'll skip it, but I'm so tired.
Exactly. You can hear that debate happening inside your head instantly when you're making a simple decision. L2 learners often deprive themselves of using this amazing internal resource because they just stick to their L1 default.
So if we can harness the inner monologue and sort of force it to default to English, we create this private, pressure-free practice zone.
That's it. This noun phrase, inner monologue, it often collocates with verbs like harness the inner monologue, develop an inner monologue, or switch the inner monologue.
But you mentioned something fascinating earlier, that not everyone actually has a typical inner monologue. So if I'm one of those people, how do I think in English if I don't hear a voice in my head in any language?
That is such a crucial point we have to address. The research shows that maybe 10 to 15% of the population don't report having that internal auditory voice. They might describe their thinking process as seeing images or feeling thoughts or having these abstract nonverbal concepts.
Okay.
For those learners, the goal isn't auditory thinking in English. Their goal is to connect the L2 directly to the visual or the conceptual idea, completely bypassing L1 translation. They should focus really heavily on visualization, which we'll talk about later, and connecting actions to L2 words.
So the core mission is the same. Get rid of the L1 middleman. But the method might be visual instead of verbal for some people. That's a really important distinction. Okay, so we know we can think without L1 interference, and for most of us, that inner monologue is the key to rehearsal. If the goal is to build that direct thought-to-speech connection and stop the translation cycle, what's the number one most practical, most effective technique we can start today?
The sources are very clear on this. The single most effective technique for training that L2 inner voice is technique 1, narrate your life.
Narrate my life. You mean literally become the documentary voiceover for my own existence?
Precisely. You need to start a consistent, private, low-stakes inner voice practice that speaks only in English. Narrate the simple, mundane actions. When the alarm goes off, your first conscious thought must be, the alarm is loud, I am tired, I need coffee. When you're walking down the street, that car is red, I'm turning left, I am wearing my new shoes.
That sounds incredibly exhausting and frankly a little bit silly. How long do I have to keep this up before it stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling, natural?
That's a fair point because it is a lot of effort at first. You should commit to it for short, focused bursts, maybe 15 minutes a day, 3 times a day. And you really need to commit for about 6 weeks to start seeing a genuine cognitive shift. But let me explain the pedagogical why this works, because it addresses that fatigue question. When you narrate in English, you are building new, dedicated pathways in your brain that connect the real-world action like pouring water directly to the English word pouring. You completely skip the translation step. This deliberate practice builds what researchers call cognitive fluency.
Cognitive fluency, that's the speed of the internal rehearsal, right?
Exactly. Cognitive fluency is the speed and smoothness of the internal rehearsal of L2 speech. When you narrate, you're forcing your brain to retrieve words and construct sentences internally, quickly, and silently. And the faster that internal process is, the more mental resources you free up.
So the goal isn't just to speak faster, it's to save mental energy. If my brain doesn't have to work so hard to find the right word internally, I have more mental power left over for complex stuff, like understanding the nuances of a listener's reply or structuring a logical argument.
That is the crucial connection. Training your cognitive fluency enhances your external or utterance fluency. When you stop translating, you reduce the cognitive load. Think of it as installing a faster processor in your brain, specifically for English communication.
That makes the effort worthwhile, but I can just imagine when I try to narrate my life, I'm going to hit these huge vocabulary gaps, and my thoughts are going to come out all scrambled. That word perfectly describes that feeling of mental chaos when I can't find the right vocabulary.
That is a perfect term for that mental state. When we talk about thoughts or words coming out scrambled, we are defining something that is messy, disorganized, confused, or in the wrong order.
Okay.
If your inner monologue is scrambled, it means you're losing the flow because the words are unclear, the sentence structure is wrong, or you're just jumping topics without finishing a thought.
Right.
Let's look at how we use scrambled in 3 distinct contexts.
Right.
First one, formal. The witness's testimony came out totally scrambled due to the stress and the aggressive cross-examination. The pressure just destroyed their ability to articulate clearly.
Makes sense.
2, casual. I pulled up my notes for the presentation, but they were so scrambled that I couldn't follow my own logic, and I had to just abandon them on stage.
Oh, I've been there.
And 3, a funny weird one. After 3 cups of coffee and staying up all night, my brain felt totally scrambled, and I somehow managed to put the remote control in the dishwasher instead of on the TV stand.
I love that third example. It perfectly captures that feeling of operating without full mental control. Hey, did you understand the professor's complex theory yesterday? I thought it was all over the place.
Not really. His ideas were so scrambled he kept jumping from topic to topic, and I just couldn't connect the key points into a coherent argument.
Spot on. It's a great dynamic adjective.
And remember, scrambled often collocates with nouns like thoughts, words, ideas, signals, and of course, literally, eggs.
Huh, right.
Now, to overcome that feeling of being scrambled, we move to technique 2. Embrace active immersion, create a controlled English bubble.
So change all the default settings on my phone and computer.
Yes. Change your phone language, your computer interface, your social media apps, everything to English. You'll be forced to navigate daily life using English commands like update, reply, settings, or save. This passively reinforces English retrieval dozens of times a day.
Okay.
And crucially, we have to address media consumption. Learners often fall into the translation trap here. They watch a movie and use the absolute worst method for fluency development. L2 audio with L1 subtitles. This just trains your brain to ignore the sound, listen only to the L1 subtitles, and completely skip the English decoding process.
That's a huge habit to break, but it's completely counterproductive to the goal of stopping translation. So what is the sweet spot for learning via media?
The sources confirm the sweet spot is level 2, L2 audio with L2 subtitles. This forces you to connect the sounds you hear with the visual words you see. It builds a powerful direct connection between auditory recognition and written word recognition. You're building that English-only web. The ultimate goal, of course, is L2 audio with no subtitles. But if you jump there too soon, you just get frustrated and quit. Use L2 subtitles as a necessary crutch until you feel that internal auditory recognition is strong enough to stand on its own.
That sounds like a sustainable path. Now, once we have the pathways built, how do we make sure the vocabulary we use is instantly accessible?
That's where technique 3, understand, don't memorize, comes in. Fluency isn't measured by the sheer number of words you recognize. It's measured by how well you know the words, how fast you can retrieve them, and how deeply you connect them to your reality.
Okay.
If you learn 100 random words from a list in 1 week, they're just abstract data. But if you choose 10 words and use each in your own sentence connected to a strong memory or a true fact about your life, those 10 words become instantly retrievable.
That links back to the procedural memory idea, making the vocabulary a skill, not just a fact.
Exactly. Let's take a word like gregarious. Instead of just writing, gregarious is sociable, write, my brother is very gregarious, but I am shy. Now, you've connected that word to a known emotional concept and a familiar person. The next time you need to describe your brother, gregarious just pops up instantly, bypassing the L1 translation.
We've mentioned fluency a few times now. We all want it. But let's define fluency simply for our B1 learners and move beyond the idea of just speaking fast. What is it really?
Fluency is so much more than speed. It's officially defined as the ability to speak or write a language easily, accurately, and smoothly.
Easily, accurately, and smoothly. That smoothness part is what we're missing when we're caught in the translation trap.
It is. Fluency includes speed, yes, but also smoothness, which means being devoid of unnecessary pauses, self-repairs, or those fillers like an er. And crucially, effectiveness. Can you convey your intended meaning naturally and clearly? Let's run through 3 examples that highlight the scope of fluency. 1, formal. Achieving professional fluency in a foreign language requires consistent, intentional practice and exposure to high-level academic texts.
Right.
2, casual. Her Spanish fluency is excellent. She never hesitates when ordering food, making small talk, or giving complex directions to a taxi driver.
I see.
And 3, funny weird. My parrot is developing verbal fluency, but his opinions on politics and the stock market remain questionable and highly repetitive.
The smoothness factor is key. The pauses are where that translation trap lives.
So how long did it take you to reach a comfortable level of professional fluency?
Years of consistent practice. But the massive payoff is the reduced cognitive load. Now I can participate in conversations without constantly translating, which saves so much mental energy for focusing on the content.
And that's the essence of what we're aiming for. Utterance fluency, the overall flow, and the speed of articulation. Fluency often collocates with verbs or adjectives like reach fluency, boost fluency, high fluency, or utterance fluency. And finally, let's wrap this section with technique 4, inner speech checklists. This is a highly practical strategy for nurturing discussion fluency, especially for our listeners who might be students.
This is based on that study of Japanese university students who often struggle with participation and suffer from what researchers call the silent syndrome, right? The fear of error just makes them shut down.
Exactly. The fear of making a mistake when speaking is a major barrier, and they miss out on so much practice. But researchers found that using checklists centered on speech acts, not grammar rules, is a huge confidence booster.
Speech acts.
Yeah, so the checklist focuses on rehearsing specific language functions privately, within the safe space of the inner monologue. Functions like, did I practice giving a clear opinion? Did I rehearse clarifying an idea? Or did I practice gently criticizing a point?
So it's a self-assessment tool they use silently before they even enter the group discussion. They practice how to disagree politely in English rather than just practicing what to say.
Precisely. This rehearsal gives them a private area to build confidence and prepare the necessary structures. It eliminates that initial scrambled feeling when they open their mouths. It helps them prepare their internal responses in English, reducing the reliance on L1 translation when they're under pressure.
Okay, so the inner voice is trained, and we're narrating our lives, building that cognitive fluency. But even when the thought is immediate, L1 interference means the wrong word or structure sometimes slips out, creating those errors that just sound unnatural.
These mistakes are small, but they are mighty. They derail the smooth connection we've worked so hard to build. We really need to eradicate them.
Okay.
Let's start with mistake group A, time and duration. This is the classic perpetual confusion between since and for.
Oh, I hear this constantly. I've been waiting for you since 3 hours.
That is the perfect example of the common error. The rule is based on the type of time reference. Since is used for a specific point in time, a fixed starting point in the past. Use it with a year, a specific day, or a fixed event. Like since 2010, since last summer, since Monday, since I graduated.
And for measures the duration of time, the total length or period.
Spot on. So for the duration, you use 4 or 5 years. For 2 weeks, for a month. If you say, I've been living here since 5 years, you're using the wrong marker. The correction is, I've been living here for 5 years. This happens because many first languages just use one word that covers both concepts, so the learner is forced to guess.
Got it. Okay, moving to mistake group B verb tenses, past actions. Specifically, the confusion between past simple and present perfect when a specific time reference is involved.
Learners often over-rely on the present perfect tense because it feels safer. But if you mention a specific finished time marker in the past, like yesterday, last week, in 2005, the action is complete and separated from the present. You must use the simple past.
The classic error. I have visited Paris last summer.
Right. The time marker last summer just screams simple past. The correct sentence is, I visited Paris last summer. Remember, the present perfect is for actions connected to the present moment or actions without a specific time reference, like I have visited Paris many times in my life.
Next up is the notoriously difficult mistake group C, the borrow, lend, take, bring confusion. These verbs are directional and require understanding perspective.
They are so tricky because they define the movement of possession. Let's start with borrow versus lend. Borrow means to take something from someone else for a temporary period. The movement is toward you. Lend means to give something to someone else for a temporary period. The movement is away from you.
So if I need your pen, I am the borrower. I receive it. You are the lender. You give it.
Exactly. If you make the common error we teased earlier, can you borrow me some money? You're actually asking the other person to take money from you. It sounds very demanding. The correction must be, can you lend me some money?
Yeah.
Related to this, we have bring versus take. This is all about the speaker's location and point of reference. Bring implies movement toward the speaker or the location being discussed. Take implies movement away from the speaker or the current location.
So if I am at the office and I ask you to come here,
You would say, please bring the documents to the office when you arrive. The office is the location of reference. But if you were moving them to a third location, you would say, I will take the documents to the client's office tomorrow. Movement toward the speaker or destination. Bring. Movement away from the speaker or origin. Take.
It's all about maintaining a clear perspective in the conversation.
It is. And remember that common error. The past tense of bring is brought, not bringed.
Okay, let's cover mistake group D, the make-do distinction. The verb equivalence in many L1s makes this distinction almost impossible for learners.
Right. We use make when we are creating, building, or producing something new. This includes concrete creations like make a cake or make dinner, but also abstract creations like make a mistake, make a decision, or make a phone call.
And we use do for general tasks, activities, or duties that don't primarily involve creation.
Yes, do is used for tasks that need to be completed. Do the dishes, do exercise, do your homework, or do a favor. The common error. I made my homework yesterday. Correction. I did my homework yesterday. Now, as we cover all these highly detailed points, learners sometimes fail to prioritize them, and they overlook the importance of these small corrections. We need to make sure that doesn't happen. Wait, I just used the verb overlook. What exactly does that mean? Overlook is a verb that means to fail to notice or consider something important, to ignore something either accidentally or intentionally. If you're reviewing a document and you miss a crucial spelling error, you have overlooked it.
It suggests that the thing was there, but your attention just failed to register it fully.
Yeah, exactly. Let's look at 3 examples of how we use overlook in a natural English context. 1. Formal. The auditing team determined that the accountant had accidentally overlooked the key budgetary constraint, leading to significant unexpected expenses.
Okay.
2. Casual. She was so busy trying to get ready for the flight that she completely overlooked the message I sent last night about the gate change.
Been there.
And 3, funny weird, I nearly overlooked the tiny half-hidden sign that said, all-you-can-eat buffet, which would have been a massive error of judgment on my part.
Overlooking an all-you-can-eat opportunity is definitely a tragedy.
So did you check the final draft of your university application for spelling errors and typos?
I did twice, but I sincerely hope I didn't overlook any serious grammar problems that might cost me the admission.
Let's hope not. Overlook often collocates with nouns like details, facts, potential, problem, error. Okay, let's move to mistake group E, adjectives and adverbs. This is almost always pure L1 interference, where the learner uses the adjective form when they need the adverb form to modify a verb.
Right, simple rule. Adjectives describe nouns, adverbs describe verbs, actions, or other adverbs.
And the common error, she sings beautiful. Beautiful is the adjective form. The correction is, she sings beautifully.
Yeah.
You need the acicle ending because you are describing how she sings, the action, not describing the subject, she. Many languages just use the adjective form to modify the verb, so it's a predictable interference.
Okay.
Next, mistake group F, countable versus uncountable nouns. This causes huge errors with articles and quantifiers, confusing both native speakers and learners.
Let's start with the article issue for uncountable nouns.
Uncountable nouns, things that are substances or abstract concepts like bread, furniture, water, advice, information, cannot take the article A. The common error, especially for things you buy, I bought a furniture.
So you can only count the container or the piece.
Correct. The correction is, I bought some furniture or I bought a piece of furniture.
Okay.
Same goes for food.
Yeah.
You don't buy a bread, you buy some bread or a loaf of bread. Then we have the confusion with quantifiers. Use many for countable things. Many books, many people, many friends. You use much or less for uncountable things. Much furniture, much water, less time.
So the classic error is, I have many furniture.
Yes. The correction is, I have much furniture, or more commonly, I have a lot of furniture. And remember the pair. Less is for uncountables, less water, while fewer is for countables, fewer people.
Got it.
Let's drill down into the subtle but crucial difference between few and a few. Both mean a small number, but the connotation is different based on whether you include the article A.
That tiny article changes the entire emotion of the sentence.
It does. A few is positive. It means a small but sufficient number. I have a few friends in this city, so I'm not lonely. That sounds neutral or positive. Few without the article is negative. It suggests a scarcity or fewer than you expected, often implying disappointment. I have few friends in this city and I feel lonely. That sounds sad.
That level of nuance is what separates good English from natural English. Okay, moving on to mistake group G, pronoun gender confusion. This is a difficult hurdle, especially for our listeners whose first language doesn't rely on gendered pronouns.
It is a massive hurdle. Students from languages like Chinese, which use a single character pronoun ta for all genders, or Vietnamese, which relies on context instead of gender, struggle immensely with consistently using he and she correctly. This requires a conscious effort to internalize gender every time a third-person singular reference is made. And compounding this is the pervasive difficulty with the third-person singular S conjugation. Students often drop it because it's grammatically absent in the equivalent L1 phrase.
Like he work in a bank instead of he works in a bank. That small s is so easily overlooked.
It is. It's a grammatical signal that often causes great difficulty for learners whose L1 structure doesn't require it. And finally, let's quickly review mistake group H prepositions of place and time. Small words, but incorrect usage immediately signals L1 interference.
The classic at versus in for places.
Use in for large enclosed areas, countries, cities.
Yeah.
In London in my car. Use at for specific locations or points. At the bus stop, at the concert, at the desk. And remember the hospital rule. It's usually at a hospital when referring to a general location or place of work. You only say in a hospital if you mean physically inside it, perhaps as a patient or a visitor.
Okay.
And for time. English speakers overwhelmingly say on the weekend, not on the weekend. Simple usage rules are often the hardest to change.
Okay, so we've covered the technical side, the tools for the inner voice, the grammar fixes. But let's be real. Anxiety is the killer. What happens when stress hits? Anxiety just jams the signal, causing the brain to freeze, leading to that scrambled output. How do we, the B1 learners, get over the fear of being imperfect and the emotional wall of language learning?
This is the most crucial section because it addresses the emotional labor of learning. The first step is a massive mindset shift. Technique 5, stop treating conversations like performances.
Stop treating every single dialogue like a high-stakes exam that determines my worth as a speaker.
Exactly. You must consciously reframe conversations as low-stakes practice. The moment you stop trying to be perfect, your brain releases tension. When your brain is relaxed, the retrieval speed of words you do know is dramatically faster. Stress is the enemy of cognitive fluency.
I struggle with the idea of just relaxing. It's easy to say, but when a native speaker is waiting for my answer, the panic just sets in.
That's why the narration and checklist practices are so important. They build internal confidence. And when you do have a slip-up in public, who cares? Laugh at it. Say, oops, brain buffering, or please excuse my scrambled thoughts, and keep going. The ability to think in English will come naturally and gradually if you eliminate the anxiety associated with errors. You are practicing being confident, not being perfect.
I like that.
And that confidence is dramatically boosted by Technique 6, the power of visualization. This is a cognitive tool that works perfectly with your inner voice training.
How does visualization help with language?
When we think in our native language, we often use inner speech in conjunction with visualization. We see pictures in our minds before we say them. If I tell you to think about going shopping, you probably visualize the grocery store, the aisles, the food. You don't just hear the word milk.
So we need to harness that same non-linguistic thinking that Shabalin used for music, but apply it to English concepts. I need to see the object in my mind and connect it directly to the English word, bypassing the L1 translation.
That's the strategic advantage. Mental representation, seeing the pictures, helps with comprehension, recall, and preparation for spontaneous speaking. For learners who struggle with instant word recall, visualization can fill the gap. If you forget the word chair, you visualize the thing and try to describe it in English rather than translating your L1 word for chair.
I love the idea of actively creating a picture in my mind. Can you fully define visualize for us?
Certainly. To visualize is a verb that means to form a clear mental image of something. To imagine something you want to happen or something you have experienced. It is the act of creating a mental simulation. Let's look at 3 ways we use visualize to describe that mental process. 1. Formal. The product designers used augmented reality tools to help the management team visualize the final structure before authorizing full-scale production.
Right.
2. Casual. Before giving the high-stakes presentation, I always try to close my eyes and visualize the whole room smiling and nodding in agreement. It cuts down on my nervousness.
That's a good tip.
And 3, funny weird. I can almost visualize the exact moment I accidentally drop my entire pizza on the floor, and the memory still makes me angry.
That's a powerful way to connect a word to a memory, which is exactly what we need for faster retrieval.
I'm studying for my driving test tomorrow. I feel so nervous, and I keep imagining myself failing.
That's counterproductive. Try to close your eyes and visualize yourself driving perfectly, making all the right checks, and passing the exam with ease. That will help build procedural confidence.
Fantastic advice. Visualize awfully collocates with nouns like success, future, concept, scene, outcome. And finally, let's discuss Technique 7, the English to English dictionary. This is a practical habit change that powerfully reinforces the L2 thinking process.
We established earlier that L1 translation is a leak in the English thinking brain.
And using an L1 dictionary is actively drilling that leak bigger. Every time you encounter a new English word and immediately search for the L1 translation, you reinforce the need for that time-consuming 3-step translation process.
Right.
Using an English-to-English dictionary like the Cambridge or Oxford's Learner Dictionaries forces your brain to connect exhausted not to your L1 words for tired, but to the definition. extremely tired. You might then see the synonym drained or the collocation exhausted from work.
So it forces the brain to build a contextual web within English rather than constantly relying on the L1 as the foundational anchor.
Exactly. This is hard at first, but it makes the vocabulary knowledge deeper and more contextual. You are forcing yourself to stay inside the English bubble, making that bubble denser and stronger with every new connection.
Okay, let's put one common confusion under the microscope that we hear all the time from learners. It involves confusing collective nouns. Can I say it like this? The team are working on a new project. I mean, team is many people, so using are feels intuitively right, doesn't it?
That is a highly logical mistake based on the meaning of the word, but in standard American English, the correction is almost always, the team is working on a new project.
Why is that? The team consists of 5 people, so it should be plural.
The rule here is about subject-verb agreement when dealing with collective nouns. In American English, team is usually considered a singular noun because it refers to a single, unified entity or unit acting together. Therefore, it requires the singular verb is. If you want to emphasize the individuality of the members, you have to make the subject plural. For instance, you could say, the members of the team are working on a new project. Or, the players on the team are heading to the championship. But when using the collective noun team alone, just stick with the singular verb is. This applies to other singular collective nouns like committee, family, government, or the board.
That's a subtle but crucial distinction for sounding natural.
Now it's time to fulfill our earlier promise. You at home, get ready for a quick pop quiz on the usage points we've covered today.
Okay, let's see if my brain is still scrambled or if my cognitive fluency has improved.
Question 1. You want to ask for a pen from your friend. Do you say, can you borrow me your pen? Or can you lend me your pen?
Okay, since I need the pen given to me, I have to use the verb that means to give something to someone else, so I must say, can you lend me your pen?
That is correct. You lend, they borrow.
Correct.
Question 2. True or false? Fluency can be achieved by learning 100 new words a week from a list.
False. We learned that fluency is about the depth of knowledge, speed, and smoothness of retrieval, not just the sheer quantity of words you recognize.
Spot on. Depth is more important than breadth. Question 3. Testing the article rule. Is this sentence correct or incorrect? I bought a new advice from my mentor today.
Incorrect. Advice is an uncountable noun, so it cannot take the article A. The correction would be, I received some new advice, or I received a piece of new advice.
3 for 3. You were listening carefully and avoiding those insidious errors.
This was a dense but incredibly practical deep dive. Let's summarize the 3 most important language concepts we covered today. Number 1, the core goal is to build a direct thought-to-speech connection. You have to consciously train your brain to avoid the L1 translation trap, which increases cognitive load and results in slow, scrambled speech.
Right.
Number 2, use silent narration, that inner monologue, and visualization to visualize to create a private, pressure-free practice zone. This builds the critical skill of cognitive fluency before you ever have to speak externally. And number 3, be extremely precise with time and direction. Know the absolute difference between since a fixed point and for a duration, and understand the directionality of borrow and lend. Don't overlook these small details.
I want to leave you with one final thought, which touches on the wisdom shared by many experienced polyglots. Should you force yourself to think in English, constantly fighting your L1 default?
Based on what we've discussed about stress, forcing, it sounds like a recipe for frustration.
It is. Experts caution that forcing the internal language switch introduces stress and emotional resistance, which are toxic to the learning process. If you're feeling tight or panicked, you're doing it wrong.
Okay.
Instead, the advice is to relax and trust the process. Focus on learning through enjoyment, consume media, use English-to-English dictionaries, narrate simple, non-stressful actions. If you focus on consistent practice and enjoyment, the ability to think in English will come naturally and gradually over time without the crippling stress of forcing a mechanical switch. It's an organic shift, not a command.
That is incredibly encouraging. Now, for our listeners, we have a micro challenge. Use one of the words we learned today, like scrambled or overlook in a sentence describing your current mood or a problem you're facing. Post it in the comments below.
We want to see you practicing those new words and building that cognitive fluency.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to English Podcast Voice. We release new deep dives every week to help you boost your confidence and fluency. I'm Quinn. See you next time.
And I'm Riley. Bye.